Bring down. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Marketing QSR, the conference presented by MediaPost. I'm chairman of MediaPost, Ken Fadner. We've been doing shows about, we've been covering marketing, a company called MediaPost. When we started covering marketing in 2005 as a discipline through Marketing Daily, we said to ourselves, well, you know, how will people give credibility, in effect, to a company that is from the media business or covers the media industry principally for their marketing coverage? Well, this worked. We did. They did. You did. And we have evolved into multi-level forms of covering marketing through our publications and our conferences. So we started sector kind of based newsletters in 2011, and we did our first marketing colon, there's no colon there, usually we have a colon, marketing colon conference in 2014. We've been doing since then marketing politics, marketing automotive, marketing, we just did marketing CPG yesterday. So these are sector-based conferences. We found that there's, for us, a lot of interest and viability to these sector-based conferences. All of the tools that we all use now in the modern digital world have spread throughout the industry and throughout the advertising marketing industry. People no longer necessarily need to hear about the latest tool, although everybody's always still interested in the latest technique, but they now are more interested in learning how it applies specifically and directly to the kind of business they're in. And that's why we do these sector-based shows, and we've been gratified with the response. Today's show is I think the biggest one-day show we've ever done. The room will fill up to overflowing. Thanks for being here early. We appreciate that. Our sponsors today, we have a premier sponsor, Warner Media, and you'll hear from them later. I think they're giving a luncheon presentation. We also have a couple of spotlight sponsors, ThinkNear and YouGov, as well as a list of other sponsors who jumped in and supported this as well. We're grateful to all our sponsors. Our opening presentation spot is being taken today by Pixability. And you're going to hear from, give me the card, I'm sorry. I got you. It's Matt. We met, and I didn't retain the last name. Matt Duffy, that's easy. He's the CMO of Pixability. He's going to talk to us about trend-shaping video advertising for QSR brands. Matt? Yeah!
Morning, all.
Morning.
I guess I'm your warm-up act today, so glad everyone is here this early. Wasn't sure that there were going to be many people here this early. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Pixability. We work with some of you in the room, but for those of you that don't know us, we're a video advertising software and insights company. We're based in Boston. We have offices all over the country, one here in New York, all over the country, and in Europe. And we're doing a lot of work with QSR brands and their agencies lately, which is why we're here. And so today I'm going to be sharing some of the things we're seeing from the work we're doing with QSR brands. Let's see if this works. It does. Fantastic. So I'm going to start with this sort of overall stat. that is kind of a striking stat about what's happening in our industry. Next year, 82% of internet consumption is going to be video. Now we all know that video is sort of taking over, but this stat really sums it up. I mean, this is how we're going to have to reach everyone in coming years. Now, the other thing that we're seeing in our regular lives is we're seeing patterns of this in our regular lives. Now, this is a picture of my daughter. She's 16. She would hate that I have a picture of her up here. This is how she watches shows. Now, she is in front of a TV, but she's not looking at the TV. She doesn't watch any linear TV at all. She watches shows on her phone that are not linear TV shows, and she watches YouTube. And when she comes home with her friends from school, they sit on this couch in front of a big TV and they watch YouTube on the TV. They don't watch any linear TV. So I'm just using that as an example. We've all seen this. It's happening everywhere. I think, you know, the eMarketer stats on the other side of this slide sum it up too. We're going to lose 17 million pay TV viewers over the next few years, and at the same time gain about 17 million connected TV viewers. So the shift is happening, and we're all seeing it. So as agencies and QSR brands, how are we going to reach this, you know, people in this new reality? According to eMarketer and other analyst firms, these are the platforms that are going to take up most of our ad spend next year. It's more than 75% of our advertising on video is going to be through YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and connected TV. So for all of us, mastering these platforms is going to be the key to reaching not just people like my daughter, but people of all ages. And for Pixability, we've for those of you who know us, we've become known really for our expertise in YouTube, but over the last few years, we've built up an expertise in these other platforms, and so we think of ourselves as sort of the connective tissue between across these major platforms. All right, so let's talk a little bit about QSR. So again, like I said, we're working with a lot of QSR brands, and we are also, in addition to being an advertising platform, we're also an insights company. We do insights work for paid work for companies. Google's actually our biggest client. They hire us to do insights work all the time. Our next study is on QSR, so that's one of the reasons why we're here today too, to give you guys a little sneak preview of it. It's coming out in a few weeks. So I'm going to give you just some of the highlights of things that we're seeing in this study that may help you all. This is just sort of a broad view at the distribution of when QSR brands are putting out video content on YouTube. And as you can see, it's fairly flat across the year with a spike in Q4. But the sort of, you know, consistency that you see here is what we're hearing from a lot of brands we're working with. It's just this sort of always-on strategy for them. There's no bad time to be pushing QSR videos out onto YouTube. And the other pattern we're seeing, which, you know, we've all seen in other industries as well, is what's driving the growth in QSR. The QSR space on YouTube as a topic has grown very fast, 44% over the last 2 years. What's driving this are mostly users and influencer content. Brand content, sorry, I keep doing that. Brand content is obviously a piece of it, but we all know that how important influencers and users are on this space. So what do we do about that? Well, first let's look at an example of a user-generated piece of content that worked. This was created by a user community called Target, not the company Target, but a user community called Target. And all this was it's sort of a how-to video. It's a do-it-yourself, how to build a cardboard vending machine in your own house that distributes McDonald's cheeseburgers. And it's, you know, it looks like it was created by one of my kids. It's totally homemade. 58 million views this video has had with insane engagement. It boggles my mind sometimes, and I sometimes tell my kids you should be creating some videos because it doesn't take much these days. But I guess the point is videos don't have to be high production value. They don't have to have a celebrity to be engaging on YouTube. This is a very engaging video about QSR. So we're seeing a lot of brands start to do things more like this and feel like they don't have to have celebrities, high production value, et cetera. We do a lot of work with Google, and they've been talking about this idea of personal prime time, the idea that the way we all think of prime time has changed. It's not 8 to 10 o'clock sitting in front of your TV. It's watching whatever you want to watch, wherever you want to watch it, and it's not always high production value content. So I'm going to give you guys an example of a campaign that we worked with Jack in the Box. And they
they were smart enough to leverage influencers, knowing how big influencers, what a big part influencers play in the QSR space right now. They did this very cool campaign, Super Bowl campaign this year called Super Jack Monday. And the whole idea of it was to drive people to place orders on DoorDash for the Super Jack Monday. And sort of the premise was the day after the Super Bowl, you need some recovery food. So you should order some Super Jack Monday from Jack in the Box. But what they did that was so smart is they chose influencers that aligned with their key personas. And they created little vignettes for each of those influencers that lined up with their personas and ran this campaign with us. And the results were great. Obviously, I wouldn't be showing it if the results weren't great. But they reached all the goals that they were looking for. They had great brand lift, better than they had seen on any other campaign they had run. They drove people to DoorDash, and they had search lift on DoorDash. They drove hundreds of thousands of store visits. The fact that you can track store visits on YouTube campaigns, to me, is very exciting because you can see, obviously, cost per visit and know what your cost per visitor is, or revenue per visitor is, and do the math. And they saw great social growth. They saw all of their social channels grow during this 2-week span better than their competitors. So this was a super successful campaign, and the reason I show it again is this idea that QSR brands have to take this sort of, if you can't beat them, join them attitude now with influencers and try to leverage them, which I know a lot of you are also doing. This is just another stat from the study we'll be releasing in a few weeks that just gives you a sense of the different length of video that you see from influencers and users versus brands. With brands, they're much shorter, obviously. Brands, 90% of brand videos are less than a minute. Most of these are ads. 80% of influencer and user videos are more than 5 minutes. So this tells you two things. Obviously, influencers and users create longer videos. Some of them might be very boring, but that vending machine video was, I think it was 5 minutes. The concept here, though, is that they are getting engagement. The longer videos are getting engagement, and we always tell our QSR customers, don't be afraid to try some longer form video. The other thing that we're seeing from this study is bumper ads are growing quickly within QSR companies. They're starting to use them more and more. A few years ago, it's just 2% of videos created by QSR brands were bumper ads. These 6-second unskippable bumper ads on YouTube. Grown to be about 1 out of every 6 video that a QSR brand creates now is a bumper ad. Now, what we see working best is, this doesn't mean that people should just only do bumper ads and heavy up on that. It's using these in conjunction with longer form video is something that we're seeing work really well, where you run a bumper ad and then you retarget people with this longer form video. Sometimes even the reverse, you do a long form video and then you retarget with a bumper ad. All right, and this is just some data that shows, we saw that user and influencers do longer video and brands do shorter videos in general. But the question is, when brands do longer videos, do they get engagement? And the answer is yes, they do get engagement. You can see that even though there weren't a lot of 10-minute plus videos by QSR brands, the ones that were done had high engagement, and the yellow diamond is sentiment. So they had positive sentiment too. It'd be one thing if they had high engagement and people all hated them. So again, this just reemphasizes that what we're telling our clients is, don't be afraid of the longer form video. And I'd like to give another example. This is something that we've all seen done, which is a longer form video piece that's more about sort of the mission of the company versus pushing product. And this is a video Panda Express did. It was 3.5 minutes. And again, rather than pushing product, it was about something they believed in. It was Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and they did this very cool video with Connie Chung and the founders of Panda Express that was really engaging, had 8 million views, lots of engagement. And obviously they did this, they also did commercial video, but this video showed the most engagement of any video that they did. So long form is one thing, but also the topic of the long form tends to be more sort of mission-based, cause-based. We're actually doing a separate insight study on the growth in cause-based advertising, which is growing every year. All right, so I promised I'd be quick. It's early. Very happy that you guys all came this early. So these are just some quick takeaways from this. Obviously, right off the bat, at the front end of this, I said, listen, we all know video is going to be huge, 82% of internet consumption next year. The ways to reach people that are consuming video are YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and connected TV. So if you're not figuring out those things, you're going to be behind on it. The second point is just obviously influencers and users are driving longer form content, low production value content that's very engaging for people. So don't think you have to be on a television show when you can be on a vending machine created piece of content that has high engagement. And then the last tip is just follow the model of other QSR brands that are trying longer form content and leveraging influencers to drive engagement the way that Jack in the Box and Panda Express are. And if you do have questions for us, so the QSR Insight study that we're releasing, it'll be out in about a week and a half. We'd love to share more of it. Again, this was just a sneak preview. And I know we work with some of you in the audience, but happy to answer questions for any of you. That's it.
Matt, thank you very much. Any questions for Matt while we have him? We have a minute or so. Wait, Mr. Martin here. Hold on 1 second.
Hi, I wonder if you could talk a bit about the influencers, how you get control of them that are not your official influencers, and basically leverage it. And then ultimately, are you seeing a different metric from the QSRs in terms of what they view as success? Is it sales? Is it discussion? Is it engagement?
Yeah, well, we have a platform that tracks influencers, that shows how much engagement influencers are getting, and we usually start there with a client, but then you have to work backwards and look at the content that they're producing, because sometimes some QSR influencers are doing negative content about QSR that you wouldn't want to partner with, or this ASMR stuff, which is not as not some people. Stella tried it, but not everyone wants to be part of ASMR. So part of it is establishing first who the big influencers are, then seeing which ones match with what you're trying to say, which is what Jack in the Box did. They said, these influencers are very positive, they're all saying certain things, and then connecting with them and trying to work with them to create a campaign like that. In terms of what people are measuring, is some of the things I showed in the Jack in the Box campaigns. Obviously, it's store visits, it's cost per store visit, it's brand lift. For them, they were looking at search lift as well. They were looking at how many people were driven to DoorDash to actually place orders of this stuff. So it's all metrics that, it's funny, I still talk to some people that think of YouTube as just a branding vehicle, but there's a lot of direct response stuff happening, which is why QSR brands, I think, are jumping all over it. So.
Anyone else? Okay. Matt, you're probably here with a team, I'm guessing.
I am. You'll see Pixability people sprinkled around. They're raising their hands.
Yeah, raise your hand if you're with Matt. Oh, wow. Okay, great. Right here. Mainly up front. That's good. Studious folks you've got on your team.
Yes,
here.
and they're the ones that are working directly with the QSR brand, so they'll actually answer the questions a lot better than I will. So.
All right. Matt, thank you so much for kicking us off today. Big round of applause for Matt. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Fantastic. So we're actually going to move right into the first session here, and it's my esteemed pleasure to introduce our MC for the day, your MC for the day, Mr. Chuck Martin. Chuck Martin is one of our editors at MediaPost. He is the editor of the AI and IoT Daily. Chuck is also a New York Times business bestseller. His latest book, The Digital Transformation 3.0, The New Business to Consumer Connections of the Internet and of Things, is out soon, or is it out, Chuck? It's out now. So you've got a best-selling author in the room. He's a hell of a guy and a great guy to take us through the rest of the day. A big round of applause for my man, Chuck Martin. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. Come on, good morning. Okay, we're awake. Come on, it's burger day here. Quick thing before we do anything, the Wi-Fi password, it's kind of a secret. I'm just kidding. It's a little mistake in the program. It's all caps GSTV 2019. So GSTV 2019. We apologize for the typo, and away we go. Before we get started, I want to give you a couple of market stats, basically just as sort of a benchmark of where we are in the market. If you look at the marketplace right now, the global quick service restaurant ecosystem market is growing 6.5% annually, and that's projected out for the next 5 years. Over the next 5 years, QSR marketing is going to grow 8% in terms of revenue. So it's a robust market. The market is going to reach $16.5 billion by 2024 from $10 billion this year. The top drivers to use a QSR app are coupons, savings, and loyalty rewards. If anybody wants a copy of these, send a note to chuck@mediapost.com, and I will email it to you today. I mean, unless I get 100. I'm showing you copy stats. The top drivers to try a QSR restaurant app are coupons and loyalty rewards. So what we're seeing is coupons and loyalty rewards are a very big deal in QSR. And you'll see that in the course of today. We'll talk about location as well and where that plays. Restaurant point of sale terminals, so technology in place basically, is growing 13% annually to $22 billion by 2026. Meals ordered on mobile increased 130% from 2016 to 2018. No matter how you look at it, that is a big transformation in a market. It's basically becoming electronic and mobile. Global downloads of the top 5 delivery apps grew 115%. So it's a booming market is the point, which is why you're all here, which is why this is many people are interested in QSR and QSR marketing and basically the digital transformation of where it's going to be. Today's agenda. We're going to have an opening panel, which I'll discuss in a moment, on QSR media planning. Then we have a keynote from Burger King, from Diego, who will talk about, well, I'll let him talk about what he's going to talk about. Then we'll have a coffee break for networking. Then a presentation by the CMO of Bear Burger, which we'll really hear his life story. It's fascinating. A panel discussion about who owns the customer data. And data, at CPG yesterday, we talked about data a lot, and data is a very big deal for anybody in marketing anywhere today. Then we will have lunch, which will be right over there, and then lunch will be in here. After lunch, we'll have a keynote from Dunkin' Brands. And Dunkin' is very close to me since I was born in New England, so there's a Dunkin' at every corner. Then we'll have an interview around customer loyalty with another big brand, a networking coffee break, and we'll close the day with a panel discussion relating to location-based marketing, which is really a key area in this whole thing. So to get this kicked off, if our opening panel could make their way to the stage. The customer journey for deciding what and where to eat tonight is not only fragmented, but infused with new competition. How do marketers and media planners plan campaigns across TV, digital, and apps across food search, mapping, and delivery services? Here to lead us on this discussion is Angela Lang, Vice President of Growth at T3, where she leads the social and media practice at T3's Connections Group, working across clients including UPS, Allstate, Kraft Heinz, and Focus Brands. For the past decade, Angela has focused on creating meaningful and distinct connections between brands, their consumers, and peer communities across retail, CPG, B2B, higher education, and restaurant verticals. Please join me in welcoming Angela and her panel.
Hi there, good morning. We're so excited to be here. I'm very privileged to be able to kick off today's great sessions with this phenomenal crew. Without going too much into myself again, I know that Chuck had a really great introduction. I would love for the panelists to be able to talk about themselves a little bit, introduce them, and also what they've been up to.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Asher. I'm the owner of Asher Media in Dallas, and I also own Avalanche Media Group in Austin, Texas. So what we specialize really in is the growth of brands from local to national, such as Wingstop and Mattress Firm. We're both brands we started with.
Hi, I'm Lori Casorla, out of Boston, Massachusetts, also a New England native. I work at Media Hub on the video investments team, and our team is really focused on tackling all video across all screens, historically TV, but as we all know, that's changing so quickly and so frequently. So our team is really focused on understanding the video journey throughout a consumer's life.
I'm Sean McCormick from Harmelin Media, Senior Media Director there, working on one of our QSR brands. So just more of an account management role.
So Chuck really did a great job of introducing the actual landscape today. So we've heard a lot. It's more mobile, more fragmented. Competition is so fierce. I think this is a really great opportunity to talk about this new consumer hunger journey. So I would love to pose a question for you all as we take a step back, think about this broader. What is the one most important or at least emerging challenge that you're seeing with your clients, with the work that you're doing with this new journey today?
So there's several, but trying to pick one. A lot of the challenges that we have since we are trying to grow brands to become national, as the technology comes out, it's great, it's exciting, everyone wants to get on board. We get into a situation that our original spend levels might start small, and I can't grow a client if we can't really start that way. So as media has evolved and to be able to scale things the way that we need it, now there's minimums set in place and we're not able to. And so it's trying to find those relationships where someone understands that we have to grow a brand from somewhere and be able to use some of the media that's more affordable and also more targetable and allows us to test and learn. That's more important for us right now.
For me, so I work on Chipotle, and I would say they're obviously a brand that hopefully everyone is familiar with. We've been around for over 20 years, but historically they've really relied on a strategy that didn't involve marketing, and they've been pretty invisible for the last 20 odd years. And so in the last 2 or so years since we've had the business at Media Hub, we've really been focused on bringing them back into the forefront, and I think that's a challenge that we face and that, you know, their leadership team talks about all the time in terms of what's the right places for us to insert our brand, what makes the most sense for our brand. We're sort of operating as a startup, even though we've been around for so long, and it's really figuring out what that brand voice is and how we can be a part of culture, but also drive culture. And so for Chipotle specifically, I would say it's really just testing and learning and figuring out all of these different new tools at their disposal. You know, they haven't had a loyalty program. They just launched that, and it's kind of astonishing that they've survived this long without a loyalty program that people have been asking for years. And so it's really, as I said, really thinking of it as almost a startup mentality and how we can bring ourselves back into the forefront and back into conversation.
Yeah, I think as Kaylin said, there's a lot of challenges, right? I think if I had to pick, you know, one in particular, you know, I think producing personalized, consistent, creative really drives the loyalty and purchase and engagement. So with so many different options out there now, and it's fragmented, it's just hard to, you know, produce customized creative across all different segments, across all different channels. It's kind of put a kink into the planning process, right? So you have to plan way ahead of time now, and then talk about, you know, the scaling of budgets, right? So you have minimal dollars to test certain channels, right? New things have been out for a while, right? But you also want to customize creative for the channel. You want to customize it for a segment or for an overarching brand message. So it's kind of tackling all of that in addition to, you know, your goals and your, you know, how you're going to measure and all that. But I think creative is extremely important, and it's become a challenge for us recently.
Great. So it sounds like there are a couple of themes that are really emerging here. I hear a lot of test and learn. I hear a lot about the need for more personalized, custom creative that are really tailored to that customer experience. And I'm also hearing scale. So talk to me a little bit more about the approaches that you're taking to be able to tackle these new challenges that you're seeing.
Yeah, I can, you know, as far as tackling the challenges, internally what we've been trying to do is use media mix modeling where we can. So we have, you know, data scientists, market analytics team, to kind of break down, you know, weighting what works, what doesn't work to accomplish, you know, your branding goals, to accomplish, you know, driving specific new customer acquisition within a segment. So really just taking data from the clients, incorporating into the media, and just trying to build out a plan and weight things out. It's not very easy, but that's how we try to tackle that as far as balance.
And I think one of the things for us is we work a lot in the upper funnel, and as we work and get the customer into the mid funnel and into the lower funnel, where we are doing some tactics a little bit in the lower funnel area, but for us it's really partnering with that real lower funnel specialist. And as you're trying to really engage with that now current customer and learn more about them and retain them, it's really important to garner that information and feed it back to the people who are working in the upper funnel so that we can be smarter about who we're feeding in, right? So it's more communication along the way, gathering all that data and utilizing it to start back over again.
Yeah, but I would say, I mean, we're really doing a lot of work in terms of segmentation. As I said, we just launched our loyalty program, so hopefully that will help us get a lot more data that we're able to make actionable from a marketing standpoint. But right now we're focusing a lot on segmenting out different subsets of consumers so that we understand their frequency and retargeting them with specific messaging as best as possible based on that frequency of visit, as well as doing a lot of location-based targeting and understanding where people are from a location standpoint, and, you know, whether it's competitive conquesting. We've used actually some offline data in terms of ACR to impact our digital plans, which has been really interesting, and understand and competitive conquest based on that as well. So I think it really depends on, you know, like Kaylin said, where people are in the funnel, but understanding different tactics that we can take within different pieces of the funnel to kind of bring them back around. And then also attracting new, which I know we'll talk about as well, but attracting new customers versus growing current customers, and how we look at those is completely different as well.
Yeah, I think try to balance those two is a tough one that I think a lot of us will experience, right? Like, how do you build new customers within a specific budget, and also, you know, talk to your current customers and you know, have loyalty and engagement and all that, but also, you know, with the segmentation and creating new customers, it's a tough one.
So then, I mean, to dig even further into that, you all brought up a really good topic of all the different objectives that we now have to meet, right? So there's the idea of driving people in store, there's the idea of getting people to go with off-premise options, there's the idea of LTOs, loyalty, app downloads, things like that. So how are you deciding on how to balance that budget?
I'll start. We have all of those objectives right now. So it's interesting because I'll work with 20 franchisees for one brand, and every single one of them think something else is more important, right? And so really we need the corporate leadership and the marketing team to really help guide where they need to be. And it just depends on where they are in the evolution of their franchise and corporate life. I've seen every aspect of that. And it helps to have yes, as a company, as a corporation, we're investing more into the technology to really push the catering, because that's going to give us more profitability and really keeping up with everything. But a local owner will say, you know what, I'm not really set up for catering. I really need to focus on the online orders or the store traffic. So we end up having to customize a lot to the individual who's in charge of spending those funds. At the same time, understanding what the overall balance is of the company. So we also, though, while we focus, if the priority, say right now we've got campaigns running for McAllister's Deli, the priority is catering. What we're seeing, it's working in some markets, it's not working so great in other markets, and that has to do with also these owners and whether they're able to support that. But we're seeing the halo effect of the catering message lifting online orders and through all the dashboards. And so it's really understanding, is that then do we switch to that? I've got one franchise owner who wants to and another one who says he doesn't. So you really have to, it becomes a lot of customization.
It's an interesting topic that you had brought up is around the operations and the needs to be able to sell through and why the value of catering and make sure that people are ready to actually answer that demand when you do turn it on, right? Yeah. Lori, how about you?
Yeah, so what I would say is we're really, as I mentioned before, in startup mode. So I think there's a lot of testing and learning going on with a lot of these different tactics. And we've found, like Caitlin just said, that certain tactics actually drive others. So for us, in some instances, LTOs have driven loyalty signups. And where do we dial up and dial back when we're seeing things that have a halo effect on other tactics that we're trying to hit? But we're really testing a lot with LTOs, with free delivery. Delivery is a huge piece of the business moving forward, and trying to just figure out what the best, time period is to do certain things. And I think there's a lot of testing going on in terms of parsing out budgets. It's like, I would just say we have probably the most fluid budget of any business I've ever worked on. Like, we're always pulling money from here to put it over here and just trying to figure out what the best use case for that money is. I wouldn't say we end the year anywhere close to where we started in terms of budget by channel. As much as an agency person, I would love to be able to just figure it out and move forward. But I think we want to make sure that we're using the money the best way possible. And every day is different, and every day we're getting different information from the research and analytics team at Chipotle, and how can we help impact the results that they're seeing through the media dollars that we have working. So we are constantly changing and just trying to really see what channels have an impact on others, and then using learnings that we have through what might be some where you would think wouldn't impact certain messaging or marketing. We did a study through Turner from a first to market that we did to guarantee TV on sales lift, and we actually, one of the biggest things that we learned from that was messaging to use when pushing an LTO, which you wouldn't think. Like, we really focused on understanding that creative, and certain words that we use, or certain calls to action that we use, really drove lift from that creative. And it was actually interesting. I mean, I'm very proud of what we did with the deal, but that piece of learning was actually super helpful for the marketing team at Chipotle and the creative team. And so we're just trying to figure out ways through what we're doing with any channel to really impact every other touch point.
Yeah, and I think, when you talk about the marketing and analytics team and relying on them, not to always default back to data, but I think that's a big part of it. A lot of these QSRs and analytics clients have access to POS data, loyalty data, and I think sharing that with your agency so that we can customize a plan, and again, customize creative to reach whether it's a recruitment goal or your order online goal. It's really the accessibility to that data and making sure that it's clean and it's coming from, it's scrubbed and it's accurate. But really, I think one of our challenges is there's so much data, and trying to figure out what's valid, what's not valid, how you execute based off of, what you have. But I think we do a good job. Like I said, internally, we try to go through that and do our media mix modeling, and depending on what the goal is, trying to take that data, and whether it's segment data or just foot traffic data from location intelligence, and customize it to the plan.
So we talked a lot about data, as well as the need to think through how we leverage that. And obviously we want it to be clean, and we want it to be digestible, accessible. But for the people in the room here that might not have everything set, the foundations aren't necessarily laid, how do we scale our efforts so that if let's say we don't have beautiful data to use, what is your kind of piece of advice or your recommendation then?
I'll say you got to start somewhere, right? So if you're starting with a startup and you have no customer base whatsoever, it's almost the same thing. So you've got to start, but no matter what you do, you have to gather it, right? So you have to be in a position and ready to gather that data so that we can take it. At that point, to scale it, you're really getting into look-like modeling. That's going to be your best solution. Until you can start growing your own base, marrying it with third party, which is really huge, layering in the audiences, and then again, test and learn from that point.
And I know that we've talked about jumping to a new subject as well, and actually Lori had mentioned it in terms of her case, but let's talk a little bit more about TV. I know that TV, we've talked as a group too, is that it's been hotly debated. How do you define TV, given its convergence with digital today? I'd love for you all to talk about a little bit more of where that plays a role within the mix, and how are you actually tracking that through the funnel?
Yeah, I can start. So for us, and a lot of work that we do, we all know TV is no longer just the one big screen in your living room, right? Everybody defines TV so differently. When you talk to a millennial, is different than when you talk to someone from Gen X, or everyone defines it differently. For some people, it's YouTube. For some people, it's NBC primetime. So I think for us, it's really being flexible in terms of what we consider even buying with TV dollars. There are still a lot of, at least when we hear from the clients, or, this is our TV budget, this is our online video budget, and we're doing a lot of work and pushing a lot to say, well, listen, that means something different to everybody, and we need to start to consider what might not be TV first content partners in our TV budget. So for us, we've made a lot of progress, I would say, and we've started looking at things what we're calling streaming TV, which last year was just TV first content partners, and this year it's not. And so we're really trying to expand that definition and get our clients to be more comfortable with thinking of it from just a video perspective. And for us, as I sort of alluded to before, we've been trying to tie linear TV to business results. And for us, what that means is a deal that we did with, I guess I said Turner, but they're Warner Media now. Sorry, everyone. With Warner Media to guarantee on sales lift. And so we utilized Nielsen Buyer Insights data to understand volume of sales within our customer base, and then used third-party data to look alike off of that. And what we did was understand the lift between the TV advertising that we ran on Turner Warner Media networks versus non-Warner Media networks. And we did see a lift, which was great, and we're testing their Xandr product, which is a new offering through the Warner Media Group. And so I think it's really just thinking about it beyond just a Nielsen buying demo, and really trying to tie in alternative screens, and it just, as I said, broadening the definition, because TV means something completely different to everybody. So there's a lot that we're doing to really get our clients to feel more comfortable with that, but that also goes along with what historically we've understood as specific channel budgets and tactics. So I think we're getting there. There's still a lot to be done. It's changing every single day. And the vendors obviously are trying to monetize their digital video and their online video on all different screens. So there's a lot of different nuances, but I think things are coming into a little bit more focus this last year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of that, and I think a lot of the challenge for us is to try to get some of the traditional clients to think of TV differently, right? Instead of just adults 18 to 49, you can use digital video, you can use YouTube, and instead of having a TV budget and a video budget, have an overall video budget, or think of it as targeting, right? Who do you want to target with a video? And I think we've seen some progress over the last couple of years, I think, with clients kind of hearing a lot more about data optimized TV. YouTube's obviously huge. And I think what sells it through a lot for us is the reporting through digital video and through streaming, is that you can tell when something's working. And I think the clients are starting to realize a little bit of an over-reliance on Nielsen numbers for so many years. Those metrics really help out with us.
Yeah, I would say we, as an agency, we evolved our language in the space about maybe 8 or 9 years ago. We no longer refer to anything as TV, radio. Everything for us falls in a category of video, audio, or visual. And it's more about where you are in the funnel. It's less about how you receive that video. And so we don't tend to work in channels of budgets. We tend to work, again, we go back to the funnel and say, where are you? And what's your budget? What's what's their geography, what are we trying to cover here. And strategically, we're looking at all video. So our traditional broadcast buyers have become audio video buyers. And what I keep finding when I go to conferences or meeting others, and even working with different sales organizations, that a lot of people aren't structured that way. We have to work with digital people here, and we have to work with traditional people there, and we just don't even use the words anymore. And so in our agency, you only have to work with one person who understands both landscapes. And so our buys are, especially in the video space, we're launching a national campaign right now. It launched specifically with OTT and social video for 1 month, and then the national cable is going to layer on after that. So we're also judging, on its own, and it also allows us to get more distribution out there. But it's got 3 layers to that buy. But that's how consumers are consuming video today. And if you don't have all of those elements in, you're missing a pretty huge bucket.
So we talked a lot about TV, and obviously TV is not just TV anymore. Let's go back to the conversation around creative. I think that was an interesting thing to bring up too. As we think about creatives, and we think about the budgets that we're planning against, how are you balancing the need to build the brand, which I think Lori had talked about, with the actual goals of the business to drive revenue, to be able to drive app downloads, things like that? How are you deciding against that?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's correct or not, but a lot of the times for our branded message, right, we end up defaulting back to a broader target and using traditional television. Even though I just sat here and said we shouldn't think of it as TV and video, but that's what, unfortunately we ended up doing. So with our branded message, we kind of hit the masses with our TV, right, TV. And then when we talk about our segments and things like that, it's easier to target on digital, whether it's digital video, right, or connected TV, where you can say I'm hitting a specific, it's almost like programmatic video, right? It's easier to do it that way when we're talking about specific segments and customizing creative for, let's say, like millennial males. But with a television buy, it's easier to sell that through and say, hey, we're hitting a ton of people, and just have a broad, USP type creative.
Yeah, I would say from a creative standpoint, in the digital space at least, we're doing, I guess, dynamic light. We're day parting and targeting people based on specific meal times or specific cues that they give us within their search history. So we have an always on layer of search and programmatic display, and we're using that to target people that are lower down in the funnel. And then from a national video standpoint, I would say we focus really on the brand message. And for Chipotle, that really means getting their brand story out there. I hear a lot when we're at their offices, they always talk about if everyone could just see morning prep at a Chipotle, we would win. I mean, it's like a farmer's market in there in the morning. I didn't know that before I started the business, and I saw it for myself. And so a lot of what we're doing from a branding standpoint is trying to get that message out there and using different tactics and different partners. How long does that message have to be? What do we really need to show? Are people even interested in this? And so figuring out the right message for the branding side of things. And then for our launch of our loyalty campaign, we did use national video and tested some new tactics as well, even including cinema. And so I think it's really using that sort of more high-level national video layer, for us at least, is really more of a branding play. And then our always-on search and programmatic is more of a dynamic light, as I said. I think pushing into that dynamic space is something that we really want to do and are very interested in, and I think is really our next iteration.
And Kaylin, I wanted to go back to something that you had said as well, and you had talked about budgets and how sometimes it can be difficult to build those partnerships, especially with maybe more local stores that have less of that budget, less of that support. Tell me a little bit more about how you're making those smaller budgets work, but at the same time making sure to integrate that with what's happening from a national level.
So the smaller the budget, the more challenging it gets. you end up spending 10 times more time trying to figure out what to do with that money because it is so small. But it's also, it's a challenge that we love to do and we're really good at. And we want to see success for everyone, right? For every store, for the franchise owner, and all the way up to national. So it's really important for us to be very nimble, to be able to move budgets when needed, when things are not working, when they are working. The most important thing in working from the local to the national is all the different agencies that are involved and making sure that the corporate leadership is structured in a way that is welcoming and really has the agencies come in, meet each other, talk about their different roles, and in some cases, like ours, we worked together on McAllister's Deli. We were brought together. It was like, you're this agency and you're this agency and this is what you do. We're like, great, okay. Hey, we're working on these efforts. You need to know that we're focused on this locally. So what do we need to do nationally to make sure that we're not competing against each other for bidding on the same terms and whatnot? So that's some of the things that that you have to talk to openly about. So as long as you keep the best interest in the client in mind at all times. If you have an agency who is not thinking of the client and they're only thinking of, well, this is my territory, back off, then that's not the right agency.
I think, too, something that was interesting and got brought up earlier is this idea of how there's so much noise in the marketplace and how fragmented everybody is. There's so many options out there. What I wanted to bring the conversation back to was, what is something that you've seen that has gotten a lot of hype right now in media, in marketing, especially for this particular QSR focus, that you think just doesn't have legs moving forward, that you think is a little bit more of hype versus actual applicable in reality? So.
I can answer that kind of, right? So I don't think it does not have legs moving forward, and I'm a big proponent of kind of data optimized, addressable television, connected TV, not necessarily connected TV, more of the data optimized, linear television. I think that it has a big future. I think programmatic TV has a big future, but as far as scale goes, and especially with addressable, it's not there at the level that I think you need it to be right now, but I think it's getting there. Right, and I think it will get there, but right now, you hear about it a lot, but I just don't think there's a lot of use case for it consistently.
So we did an addressable campaign 8 years ago for TXU Energy and with DirecTV, and so it was very much in the beginning stages. And what was great is DirecTV allowed us, and again, this is before the merger with AT&T and become Xandr and all that, right? So they allowed us to just geographically keep it in the state of Texas. So you have to be willing to say, I can't always do national. But when we had, so the company TXU Energy provided a list of all the homes that are their current customers and the homes that are not their current customers. We ran addressable, and everyone confuses the word addressable to, it really is one-to-one. It does not look like modeling, so if anybody's trying to tell you that it is not. So we identified the home values that were not a TXU customer, that are $300,000 and above, the audience that they wanted. The household income was a certain amount, $75,000 or whatever, and we served ads to just those homes. And actually met someone who was living in a city that happened to be TXU at the time. They were in Round Rock, which is not typically in Austin, is not a TXU territory. And he's like, I've seen your spot. And I'm like, then you must have DirecTV. And he's like, I do. And I go, you must not be a TXU Energy customer. And he's like, I am not. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. So I know firsthand it worked. It got the right person. But what was exciting is that we actually did a match back after the campaign ran, and TXU pulled their homes again of their customers, sent it back to DirecTV, did the match back, and we saw exactly the lift that we needed. When we evaluated addressable television at the time, we were comparing it to the cost of doing spot cable. We already had buys that were in place, and went back and evaluated post buys, and the CPM was the same. So it was a successful campaign, trying to Again, find scale to do that. The minimums on doing it now are hard for someone who really wants to focus on a geographic area. You end up having to do it nationally. But we are now looking, and we work with Xander and are talking to them about specific campaigns of pulling the household data of someone who's purchased this product at a store, a competitor's product, and we now want to just target our TV ads to them, and then we go back and look at Lyft again. And so I think it's there, but they have to be willing to scale it down and not make it so price prohibitive.
Yeah, and I think for satellite, you can definitely do it. I think terrestrial, it's a little different, especially actual addressable one-to-one, right?
It's all satellite.
Yeah.
It's all connected, 100%.
Yeah. Because a lot of the stuff with the data optimized and the addressable terrestrial stuff, like true terrestrial, the viewership data is looking backwards, right? So they're looking at that viewership data from maybe, it could be a couple weeks ago. A lot of them are, a couple months ago, where you're looking at viewership data from the past to predict where they're currently watching. So it's not really, for one, it's not one-to-one, and it's also not based off of true real-time programming.
So it sounds like there's a lot of things that are a little bit of hype, but I talk a little bit more about the emerging ad tech and the things that are really exciting you, that you're looking forward to.
I think from our standpoint, we use location intelligence, or at least one of our clients. I think that we use it directionally right now, but I think that there's a big future in that, being able to track, where your customers have been. Have they driven past an out-of-home billboard? Have they seen your digital ad? And then have they walked into your store? And be able to track that consumer journey is exciting to me. I mean, I think it should be exciting to all of us to know, one-to-one where you're going. Now, I don't know if it's going to get exactly where we would like it because of privacy stuff, so that's kind of what concerns me with that. But I think it's pretty cool.
We talk a lot about addressable TV, and I guess I'm kind of going to couple both the questions. But I think it's really finding the right use case for it, and addressable TV is sort of this shiny object that everybody wants to use and test, and I think it's really finding the right use case for it. And we've looked into it a lot for Chipotle, and I think it's, at this point in time, doesn't necessarily have a place within our plan. That's not to say it won't or it doesn't, especially as we start to gain a lot more first-party data with our loyalty program. But I think it's also about finding the right and using the right creative message in there. You're paying a premium in most cases to target a specific audience. You want to be able to talk to them in the right way and get the message out there that you intend to and want to. But I think it's beyond that. What excites me is talking more on the identity level versus one-to-one home. So addressable TV, I'm a fan of it. I'm a proponent of it. It's a one-to-one, but it's one-to-one home, right? It's not one-to-one Lori Casorla, and being able to target me specifically. I live in the home, but I might not be the one watching the TV. And so I think a lot of partners are starting to talk about how we can use data to target people on an identity level versus just a one-to-one home level. And I think, we haven't necessarily done it yet, but I think it's figuring out, again, what the right use case is for that, how we can use that data, is there scale there? All of those, questions always come to mind, but I think as that develops, that's something that I think really excites me, especially from a QSR standpoint.
And that's even more customized creative. Right?
Yeah. And selfishly, I'm super excited about where we're headed in the technology for media strategists to be able to plan all of these platforms, since we work in every paid space. Trying to put all this together into one place for a client is very challenging, and trying to look at it all holistically so that we can see what the audio side's doing, all the video sides, but I mean, even just within the video channels, just being able to, right now, even in the buying software, because no one can define where connected TV, streaming TV goes, it's like, well, I can buy it in my digital platform, I can buy it on my traditional platform. So I'm just looking forward to software and planning tools to help put it all in one place and not silo it out, so that we can have better representation to the clients, more concise, more executive summary information, versus putting all the hours on the back end, trying to piecemeal all the reports together for one big solid report.
Speaking of reporting, we haven't talked yet about attribution and measurement, so I know that's a hot topic as well. What is something that you feel like still hasn't really been solved yet? I know we talk about being able to provide a beautiful executive summary for our clients, being able to make sure that all the results that we're actually showing are accurate, deduped, things like that. What are you still bumping into in terms of things that aren't really adding up?
Is your ROS still really, is it really right? You know, are we really pulling in the data from the right place? That's always a big one. Is it really telling the true story? When everybody's looking at the dashboard, are you understanding the exact same thing? Or are you reading it differently? You've got so many different minds and different ways that people look at numbers. And so I think that's challenging. Hopefully, and you can't, and are you really pulling everything in? Because there are certain places that we're placing media in one area, but we can't get it to pull into the dashboard. So it's hard to see the full picture.
Yeah, I would say traditional TV is still something that's a struggle, I'm sure, for everybody in this room. And when we talk about, we do a lot of work with location-based attribution and understanding how our media is driving to store. And the biggest piece that we aren't capturing is national TV. And we've been talking about it for a long time. And there are partners out there that do it. And it's finding, some partners are better at linear TV and some are better at digital media. And those aren't always the same partner, which also creates another problem. But we actually talk a lot about using attribution against TV, and that's really pushing it down the funnel, which isn't always the intention of TV. And so I think that's just something that we come up against a lot, and we're always looking at partners and trying to figure out and test, and we've done some beta tests with some linear TV attribution. And but again, I think we always come back to, well, this isn't an immediate, it's a 14-day look back window. Like, that's not really what national TV is always meant to do, especially because we are using it as more of a branding tactic. But anecdotally, we get a lot of response and excitement from the clients when, we had a unit in the NBA playoffs, and we saw huge growth in loyalty signups within 3 minutes of that spot running. And so that's awesome and so exciting, but how do we really tie that back into a full picture report? I mean, that's really hard. So I think a lot of what we're trying to figure out is really how we tie in branding tactics with all of the other tactics that we have, especially when we're talking about national TV.
Yeah, I think definitely the traditional television is the one that's tough, right? So like I come from a DR background, and there's always surprises in the data. When you're running one-to-one and you can see what your actual spot was doing back when I did DR, and then you come to traditional and you're relying on TRPs and impressions. It's there's always unexpected, and you can't really gauge that with traditional television and with Nielsen. You don't know what it's actually doing. And a lot of the times, it should just be kind of like a long tail type thing. Like you said, it's not meant to produce a result right away sometimes. But yeah, kind of marrying that in with your digital tactics and measuring all that is the disconnect. So I think what we try to do to counter that is, with traditional television, we try to marry up a lot of our digital tactics, and if it's event-based, like you said, NBA playoffs, we try to use our social channels to kind of boost that, and our digital video to boost that. So, if we run during the playoffs or something like that, follow it up with some paid social, and make sure the creative lines up with television, and then you can kind of measure that a little bit. You can measure it based off the social to see, who saw the spot, if they're chatting about it. But yeah, I think it's definitely, traditional, your TV, your out-of-home, your radio, and how do you marry that up with, your digital stuff where you're getting, pretty much real-time attribution. And that's kind of what the clients, I think, have come to expect now, because they've gotten that from digital. And it's like, is our TV working? It's like, well, I don't know.
Let's go back to another subject that you all had brought up. It's the idea of loyalty. Loyalty versus, let's say, customer acquisition versus maybe frequency compression as it relates to building loyalty. How, if at all, are your strategies different? Talk to me about that. Or are they all the same?
They're definitely different. I mean, they have to be. Acquisition and retention, upper funnel, lower funnel. It's almost the same thing. And so you really do have different strategies. Doesn't mean you're not going to, you can use the same media, but you're doing it differently. And so you have to make sure that you're focusing on that audience and you have a plan for that audience. And it is a different plan than what you have for the other audience.
Yeah, I think from the brand standpoint, it's kind of a delicate balance message out there, but you want to avoid, I guess, that like consumer apathy where they're just sick of seeing the same overall brand message. So I think personalization, you know, you can do it with the brand message where you can personalize for a segment, and you can also do it for like a lower funnel and just include like a promo or an offer on there. But as long as it's like relevant content on a relevant platform, I think you can do both with the same kind of mindset.
So this is more of a soft law question, but knowing that we're all representative of a lot of agency side, when you're working with your clients, what is the one thing that you're craving or looking for that would help you do your jobs better, be more strategic in terms of all your plans, your executions? Because I know we've got a couple of brand people in the room too, so.
I want more video content, please. I do, and I want all forms of it. I want all different links, and it's like a playground because there's so much video out there to buy, to engage with this audience in different ways, whether it's acquisition, retention. There's so many things you can do with it now, and they're at different price points, you know, expensive and inexpensive. But if you don't have really great content and a variety of content, then it really limits that plan. It does make things more challenging. We can get around it, but I don't think you're doing yourself any justice if you don't have the content available to be used.
I would say, more from, you know, a mindset perspective, I would just say a curiosity and a willingness to try, right? We're all trying to figure out our way through this landscape, and we want to test new things, and we want to be creative, and we want to, at the end of the day, we all have the same goal, or we should hopefully all have the same goal in mind. And from an agency side, I think, you know, we love to be able to use our minds and be creative and bring you guys new opportunities. And there's just someone said, if it doesn't work, that's okay. We can learn from it, and we can learn together, and we can move on, and we just won't do it again, and that's fine. You know, I'm not going to be mad if that test didn't work out. And I think just that curiosity and that openness, I mean, as I said, we're all on the same side, right? We all want to figure out how to grow the business together, and just being open to allowing us to test those things or try new things or really take a leap and figure out something new altogether. I would say the deal that we did with Turner to guarantee on sales lift, I mean, I was thrilled that, you know, they let us do it and just said, yeah, I mean, try it, take this millions of dollars and just let's see what happens. And it worked, and that's amazing. But if it didn't work, we still would have learned something, and then we would have pivoted and figured it out. So I think it's just that sort of curiosity and openness is what we crave.
Yeah, I think definitely more video content, definitely the leeway there to kind of test, optimize, and learn. Also, I think a little more willingness to go out there and own like organic social, right? So I think that makes a big difference. And if you've seen with like Wendy's, right, and what they do, they're killing it on social. So I think a lot more brands could benefit from doing that and being a little more out there with that.
I think we're coming up to time, but I wanted to leave a little bit of a gap for questions from the audience. Anybody have anything? Oh. Don't be shy.
For your questions, if you could use your name and title and organization before you speak, that'd be great, because it's being live streamed.
Hi, my name is Gani Kill, and I'm with YouGov. I'm a sales director there. Just Okay. Hi, my name is Gani Gill. I'm with YouGov. I'm one of the sales directors there. I'm very interested to learn, like, from the agency perspective, how are you guys actually tracking the success of your campaigns? Like, do you guys have certain metrics that you generally would look for to track, like, you know, like how successful a campaign has been, whether it's TV, whether it's social, or anything online?
I can jump in. Yeah, I think we can track the media metrics, right? And that's easy to measure the media metrics for the most part, unless you're kind of talking about TV, you're just measuring off Nielsen. But I think it's important that there's a good conversation between the agency and the brand about, are we impacting your business and sales objectives, and trying to bring those two together, right? Because we can only measure what we can measure, right? We can manage what's measurable, and that's only based off of media. So if we can't match that up with your sales data, you know, it's more of a process working together to figure that out. Because you could deliver a ton of impressions and not necessarily the right ones, or have any kind of sales lift. So unless we get feedback, which I think is incredibly important, we're not going to know if it actually worked to achieve your business objectives.
I would also just add that every campaign, not only every client, but every campaign has a different objective, right? So our loyalty campaign, our goal was X amount of signups. And that's easily something that we can track. Obviously, we need that information back from the client. So again, it's being able to pass back that data to us to prove that out. But it's just really figuring out from the outset of a campaign, like what are we being measured against? What does success look like? As I said, every tactic is different, and every tactic has a different measure of success. So it's figuring that out from the outset. But yes, I mean, we absolutely want to prove out at the end of the day that whatever tactic or channel or objective we had was successful.
Hi, I'm Jake Perlmutter. I lead QSR partnerships at Live Nation across our managed talent, festivals, and venues, and we actually work with Chipotle, so
Awesome.
This question is really more for you, Lori. All good. We've really focused on trying to, exactly what you guys are talking about, the difference between acquiring new customers versus retaining new customers. And I loved what you guys did with Venmo, literally Venmoing people free money. So my question to you is, with something that splashy, are you able to retain that customer in that moment, or what is the additional work that you need to do to keep that business going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's once you have that customer, I mean, the frequency of visit to a Chipotle is not as frequent as we would want. So I think it's really, yes, there's definitely some drop off, right? Like, I'm sure some people just sent it because they wanted the free money and they took it and they didn't actually go buy a burrito with it. But I think it's then being able to use that data and understand who that person is to then retarget them with different messaging. If we understand that they are a current customer or a lapsed customer, like all of those messaging tactics are different. So it's just being able to use sometimes what seems like a splashy, cool marketing thing to a consumer to actually be able to then continue that conversation with them.
Hi, I'm Jazz with Hollywood Branded out of Los Angeles, California. And my question is, how important is product placement and branded content to each of your agencies and respective clients, since we're now seeing a huge dynamic shift from traditional media buys, down to digital, and then such a fragmented and cluttered environment in that area? Like, how important, as you had mentioned, content is obviously very key to creative. But in my position where where I have the ability to talk to brands and agencies about how do we strategically place them, for each of you, have you seen a change or shift in that landscape?
I would say yes, we're seeing it. A lot on the CPG side, but we are seeing more of it's always been there, but now there's really more of a growth in that space because of of programming that in avenues that you can't get in, you can't even do advertising in. So because of the subscription base and whatnot, it definitely is an area that you need to focus on and have a line item for and see what you can do in that space for sure.
I think for us, it really depends on the client. Ulta Beauty is a big client of ours that I also, work on their business, and it's actually something that we don't really do anymore because the main focus for us is getting their brand message across beyond just a shot of a store in a show, and really telling their brand story and they launched an entire new campaign last fall, and it's done incredibly well for them, and really pulling back on things like get the look from, your favorite celebrity on the red carpet, or shooting someone going into an Ulta Beauty store. And so I think it really just depends on the client. That said, we need to figure out a way to get into content, but we want to, at least, from our perspective, we want to make it as meaningful as possible, and not just, oh, hey, there's a Chipotle bag in the background of that shot, or someone's just getting Chipotle delivery over here. And I think it's really about finding the balance between both. We don't want it to seem like an infomercial. No one would even let us make it feel like an infomercial, even if we wanted to. But it's really not, from our perspective, it's very client dependent, but it's not just, let's get the product in there and that's it. It's really figuring out how do we partner with them, and then if we do that, how can we make it bigger than just a TV integration? And how do we bring it to social and digital and custom content and make it feel like more of a true 360 partnership?
Last question. I wonder if you could talk a little bit, Lori, you're looking at video instead of TV, which I think is fabulous. Caitlin, you're looking at audio, video, and so forth. How do you know the right way to do that? I mean, not you personally, but how does a group know the right way? And does the industry over time coalesce into these kinds of innovative viewpoints?
Well, I would say that we started that kind of phrasing and mindset from a conference that I attended in New York back almost 8 or 9 years ago with the IAB. And that was, it just was a light bulb that went off in my head that totally could see the path of where this was headed. And more organizations, publishers were heading down that path. We were sitting there, and it was, I think it wasn't an upfront, but it was like a new front, and it was, or an after front at that time, and it was really the head of ABC talking with the head of IAB, and in really the beginnings of the time when it was all becoming connected and evolving together. So we struggled back in Dallas trying to get everybody else on board. More and more people now are, and more publishers that we're speaking with are more in that mainstream now as well. And the biggest challenge is trying to take a salesperson who's sold one side and say, now you're selling all of it, without them having to bring their digital person along. So we did kind of throw down a gauntlet at our agency and say, you know what, this is where we're going, this is where we're headed. If you do not embrace the space and understand everything there is to know about audio and how it's all connected, and same with video, then you as a traditional broadcast buyer will be obsolete. And so out of that, I lost one buyer. Everybody else embraced it and are phenomenal at talking about the space very fluently. And I understand why the one person left, and today they're still not doing it. So I get it.
And then, yeah, from an industry standpoint, I think we have to all catch up, right? I just spent this week at the upfronts, and yes, there was a lot of focus on the new content, but everybody was talking about their subscription service or OTT, and someone said to me the other day, like, showing that you've grown your OTT is the new #1 slide. Like, everyone's growing at 300%. And so I think, sellers they're trying to catch up, and they're trying to figure out how they can talk about it from a video standpoint as well. Very tactically, NBC, and they're pushing C-Flight last year, and there are all these headlines about ratings are down, linear ratings are down, and that's true. But when you look at the other platforms, they really make up for the difference of eyeballs being lost from a linear standpoint. So when I'm buying linear TV, how do I also get those eyeballs from all the other screens? Is that part of my linear TV buy? Is it not? Do I have to do it separate? It's totally different for everybody. But I think starting last year and moving into this year's upfront, that's a bigger piece of the conversation. ESPN mirrors their ad load across all of their live content, so I can't buy it from a digital standpoint. So again, they're just really trying to figure out the best way to monetize the content that they have. I think the biggest piece is that the eyeballs are still there. It's just what bucket of money am I buying them out of, or can I just get them when I invest from this screen and get all the other screens as well? So.
Thank you.
I think we're out of time. Thank you so much to our panelists.
Thank you.
What a great panel, and kudos to Angela for doing a whole panel moderating without notes. That is a talent. A couple things, the people standing in the back, there actually are seats up front. They're scattered. I mean, it's not like there are 100 seats, but there are seats, all kinds of places up front if you want to come and get a seat. We don't call on you if you're up front. It's not a big deal. The other thing is, just for those who have come in later, the Wi-Fi is GSTV, all caps, GSTV 2019. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Diego Suarez, the lead U.S. media advertising and communications at Burger King. Diego worked at Ernst & Young and PricewaterhouseCoopers prior to joining Burger King's finance department in 2010. He spent 5 years counting Whoppers before coming to the ad side in 2015. Since then, he brought the King out of retirement to appear with Floyd Merriweather, Conor McGregor, Triple Crown winning horse trainer Bob Baffert, and Cheeto spokescat Chester Cheetah, and he reunited Napoleon Dynamite with Pedro to help sell Chessy Cheese. Please join me in welcoming Diego Suarez.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Burger King. Is this my clicker? Yeah, all right. A global iconic brand that needs no introduction. Our flame-grilled Whoppers are served all over the world to thousands of guests every day. And our crown is memorable and recognizable. In fact, I'm pretty sure every single one of you has taken a picture just like this at some point in your life, and hopefully you posted it on social media. I love the picture of the dog over here wearing our Nightmare King crown. I've tried to do that with my dog so many times and it never works. So I'd love to know what the owner of that dog did to take that picture. We as a brand are always trying to break through. We're always trying to get attention. And attention is hard. It's a cluttered landscape in QSR, and everybody wants consumers' share of mouth. That's what I like to call it at the office versus share of voice, share of spend, share of mouth. I want to show you guys a quick video about a campaign that we recently did where we were able to break through and get some attention. We're just going to switch decks for the video. Oh no, it's not this one. We'll just stand by and wait. It's the first one.
Burger King is introducing real meals to draw attention in part to Mental Health Awareness Month.
There's choices like the blue meal, the salty meal, and the yes meal.
No one is happy all the time. That is true, and that's okay. Feeling your way is just as important as ordering your way.
What a good thing.
Feeling blue. Kinda down. Can't wait to leave this closed-minded town. My boss is such a freaking creep! I just told him to go f*** himself! When I'm feeling weird or sappy, not angry, just not happy. All I ask is that you let me feel my way. I love it. I think we're not always happy.
Mental health advocates say, yeah, they might be onto something here.
It's okay to be grumpy.
Yes.
Yes. You know what? I like it.
This is great.
It's controversial, it's unprecedented, a very unique move. Some people will say Burger King doesn't belong in this conversation. Guess what? We're talking about it.
Everybody's not in a good mood.
Sometimes you need to scream.
Talk about it if you do have mental health issues.
It's okay to not feel okay.
the stigma, that's the enemy. And I really hope that something like this will get people talking about the reality that mental illness is as real gets.
All right, so Moody Meals. This was an idea that we absolutely fell in love with when our agency, Mullen Lowe, first presented, right? It was bold, it was risky. Not everybody's happy all the time, and that's okay, you know, feel your way. We absolutely fell in love with it. It took us a while to figure out how to pull it off, how to get it launched in all the restaurants. It was complex, had packaging, it had the crown, we had window statics throughout the restaurants, we had original music, we had a video. But we came together, and the reason we put so much effort and so much work into it is because we really felt like it was going to help us break through and get attention to that millennial audience, which is we're always trying to talk to. The results were amazing. It was one of our most successful campaigns from a social conversation perspective. So I talked a little bit about attention, right? Attention is really hard to get, whether it's from millennials, Z generations, millennials, whatever you want to call them. Attention is hard to get. In fact, it's hard to get attention from anybody. I mean, it's even hard to get attention from you guys in this room as I'm speaking, right? Like, probably only the people that work with me are paying attention. So we're always trying to get attention. And when it comes specifically to our habits and how media is consumed, you know, believe it or not, like, we spend so much time on our phone, we're addicted to it. I mean, I'm responsible, guilty of this as well. We actually end up scrolling. If you scroll all the time you spend on Instagram, on Facebook, on your apps, whatever you do on your phones, it's equivalent to 13 stories. I mean, I probably go through this like before getting out of bed. So it's really hard to break through. And when you're looking at what's being consumed on social media, brands are blasting their message out there, right? And sometimes people don't want to see it. There's ad blockers, there's different things. People kind of, you know, tend to scroll through it. We're always challenging our partners, like, how do we retain engagement and, you know, make sure attention is peaking and breakthroughs happening. There's a really good exercise we did. I would encourage all of you brands to do it. We took just 3 QSR brands, the news feed from Instagram, put it side by side, and if you blind who is who, I guarantee you will not be able to tell which brand is which brand without knowing the pictures before you do it. It was a great exercise. We did it with Mullen Lowe together in one of our brainstorming sessions over in Boston. It was very eye-opening, kind of made us realize, all right, we got to do something unique, and really, that's going to really help us stand out. So the goal we have and what we're always striving to do is, like, how do we make Burger King stand out? How do we make everybody love Burger King? And how do we make everybody talk about Burger King? Our fans, they want to be entertained, right? When you open your phone to see what's happening on your news feed, you know, whether you're taking a break from work or whether, you know, you're in line to get a Whopper out of Burger King or just killing some time, you're going to open your phone. You want to see funny things, right? You want to see the influencer accounts. You want to see comedy videos. You want to see funny memes. Everybody right now probably wants to see their friends using the filter where they look like the opposite sex, right? Nobody wants to see Burger King saying, hey, we have 10 delicious crispy golden nuggets for $1.49, you know, come on down, right? So we're always looking for ways that's going to help us entertain our fans and help us to break through. We kind of have like a quote we use, like, we need to have an opinion and we need to be part of what interests people. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video about some of the things we've done over the past year where we've listened to our fans and found a unique way to talk to them to help us break through and get their attention.
Wendy's pulling the plug on the spicy chicken nugget.
Oh, hell no!
I don't know why they got rid of that.
Burger King, you keep elevating your game.
This collection is crazy.
Burger King posted this on their Twitter tonight. It's all over Twitter right now.
The Burger King marquee asked Wendy's to the prom.
People are loving that Burger King asked Wendy to prom.
That's a royal. Just stole Harry and Meghan's thunder with a proposal. Guess what?
She said,
Yes.
that is genius.
Someone on Twitter said, can Ronald come along too? Burger King was like, we hope not.
The International House of Pancakes changing its nickname from IHOP to IHOB. No! Get this, Burger King changed their name to Pancake King.
Hey Burger King, do you have a grill IHOP can borrow? Sorry, old Burger King can't come to the fore.
These guys got senses of humor. That's fun.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about listening to our fans. There's one specific product we just recently launched. I'm going to spend a little bit more time going through in closer detail with you guys. So in addition to making sure we're entertaining our fans, getting attention, it's also important to listen to them. So we tasked our agency, Mullen Law, with coming up with, again, one of our breakthrough killer creative ideas that was going to get attention. But the real task and the real objective was relaunching funnel cake fries. So funnel cake fries was a product we had in the restaurant 10 years ago, and we wanted to bring it back, right? So through studying social trends and seeing what our fans were talking about, we were able to see that there was actually a demand, like a social call on it for it to come back, but there was also a funny challenge going on, or a trend on social media. The 10-year challenge, right? So I'm sure you guys all remember that it's probably still happening, like Transformation Tuesday, or people are still posting this all the time, but you take a picture of yourself 10 years ago, post one today, post something funny about it. So we saw that this was happening a lot, our audience was obsessed with it, and our product had actually debuted for the first time 10 years ago. So, I mean, that's perfect, right? That's a wonderful insight, but it's not enough to break through, it's not enough to get attention. We want every insight to be actionable. So we needed a way to stand out, and I'll show you guys a quick video about what we did to make this product stand out.
Last week, January 23rd, Burger King went through my old tweets, and they liked 3 of my tweets from 2010. So I screen captured it and I tweeted, "Why is Burger King liking my 8-year-old tweets?" That tweet was liked by 13,600 people. Then today I see this article on Complex that says, "Here's why Burger King was liking your old tweets." Burger King had many on Twitter perplexed after the fast food company began liking people's tweets from 2010. I wasn't the only one. There's a bunch of other YouTubers and just social media folk that fell for this trap. Complex goes on to say, "The reason behind the move, Burger King is bringing back funnel cake fries." I mean, it's not nice to manipulate us into hawking your sugar-coated French fries. And the thing that upsets me the most about all this is, it's just how genius it was. We were like the little mice. We went for the cheese in the trap and it snapped on us. You win, Burger King. Oh, I'm making this video right now. But I'm still angry. I want a little something in return. I do what I can to support the Boys and Girls Club and Make-A-Wish. And I'm just thinking, Burger King, I already gave you the value by blasting this tweet out. Maybe we could make amends, help some kids, do something good. Burger King's gonna donate to each of those organizations $25,000. I don't know much about Burger King. I definitely didn't know anything about them before making that joke video 2 days ago. I appreciate their open-mindedness and their candor with this. I appreciate it. I'm not going to waste the food.
So that was a lot of fun. I remember that week when we all woke up and we first saw the video, it was a bunch of random texts like, someone's eating Burger King out of a trash, like what are you guys doing? But over the next few days as it all evolved, it was great. We got 2 videos out of it, and as you guys saw, the numbers were great. But the most exciting part was that we were able to break through, get attention, and reintroduce funnel cake fries to our fans that were asking for them, but also introduce them to a whole new generation of a younger guest that didn't know about funnel cake fries, but that is addicted to social media and to Casey, and now they know about it. And the good thing is now, the older generation, the younger generation, they're coming to our restaurants, enjoying the delicious funnel cake fries, but they're also enjoying our classics, such as like our flame grilled Whopper, our chicken fries, or our crispy chicken sandwich. So as you can see, what we're doing works. It's important to entertain, listen to your fans, and continue to break through and get attention. That's what we'll continue to do, and that's why the king will continue to reign on social media. Thank you.
Could we take a few questions? Sure. One is, how do you look at PR or earned media in this? You obviously, you can get on Good Morning America with a phone call. Is that a big part of all this campaign?
Yeah, whenever we're getting ready to launch a campaign, we always make sure we have mass awareness, depending what the objective of the campaign is, and earned media is always just an added benefit. It doesn't always come. It's definitely a challenge and a lot of work, as our agency knows. Any others?
Hi, Sean McCaffrey with GSTV. So a quick personal aside, a good friend owns 100+ units in the Midwest, so I've probably eaten more Burger King than I care to mention. But so a 2-part question. Sure. Sort of on that note, great work with the brand over the last couple of years. How did you make this pivot, I guess, inside the company to build trust with the system, to be a little bit, as you said, controversial with this stuff? And then secondly, you mentioned your agency partners. How do you orchestrate that dance with all those different partners? And as a publisher like we are, what's the best way to bring solutions to your team?
Sure, yeah. Okay, 2 parts. First part, I think, it's embedded in our brand's DNA just to be a bold challenger. I think we've done a lot of things that definitely require taking a risk and taking a chance. You have to, once you do one and you can see that, you reap the rewards, you have to make sure you have a really good insights team behind you showing that it's working. Not everything we do is going to drive sales, but some of it is going to drive brand love. So it's just continuing to stay ahead of what's happening and just being daring. And then as far as our agent, I love all of our agencies. We have, 5 that we primarily work with. So Mullen does our social digital. David is our national creative agency. Work very collaboratively together. We brief everybody together. And then, they go back, work their magic, come back, and then we execute it and see how it all comes to life. All right, well, I'll be around. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great stuff from a great brand. Now we're going to have a 10-minute sponsored presentation by Think Near. Come on up, Mandana.
All right. Good morning, everyone. First off, I was just going to say we've all been sitting for 2-3 hours, maybe 2-second stretch. Everyone, you want to get up? No? All right. My name is Mandana Molano. I head up marketing for a company called Think Near by Telenav. We are a location-based mobile platform. And today I want to talk to you a little bit more about how to be smarter in terms of your efforts with location-based media and how you can take it well beyond the standard use cases of, say, geofencing. Sorry, I forgot to ask about the clicker. I just pressed this. Okay. All right. What? Where do I point it to? This way? Yeah. All right. So true story, our company actually exists because of a crappy restaurant. Our founders were actually intrigued by this particular local spot that nobody would go to during lunchtime, and they thought, wouldn't it be cool if we started a company that tapped into location-based intelligence and media to drive foot traffic to places that don't get as much traffic during lunch hour. So they started by tapping into bitstream data, location-based bitstream data, and soon realized that there was so much inaccuracies in location data that it really was a lost battle to begin with. So let's say that idea failed because it just wasn't feasible given the quality of data, but it became the preamble to something even better, which is why we exist today, a company that's really grounded in location accuracy and reliability on good location data to do amazing things. So I'm sure a lot of you guys in business school and meetings and conversations have seen this example of a bar of iron costs $5. Made into horseshoe, it's $12. Made into needles, $3,500, and finally made into these intricate balance springs for watches up to $350,000. And that for me has always been the story behind the value of data, that it isn't the data itself or the scale of it that matters, but rather what you actually do with it. So today I want to talk to you about two examples of location data and what value it can bring to your business, particularly for the QSR category. Number one, do you know that location data can actually help improve your effective reach? A real quick example, a real kind of world example. National chain restaurant, casual dining, doing standard geofencing, situated in this particular town. Some of you might recognize the city. I'll kind of like leave it at that, just for fun. They do the typical 2-mile radii geofence strategy. When we look at it and we layer that with location-based data and audience intelligence, we see that in reality, the concentration of their target audience is so spread out throughout this 2-mile radius. So in reality, there's so much waste. They're covering an area with people that would never visit that particular location. So tapping into things like demographic, lifestyle, life stage, as well as purchase intel, what do these things about their purchase patterns and habits tell us? And we go very, very granular. So forget about 1 mile, 2 mile, zip code. We look at home block group targeting, very, very specific in terms of the concentration of their desired target audience. And we find out that the green areas are actually affluent areas very close to the not so affluent areas that are their target audience. So being able to be that specific and being able to separate and kind of apply that laser-focused targeting makes all the difference. Imagine if you truly targeted that 2-mile radius and how much waste you were driving with your effort. So improving your effective reach with, like I said, home block group targeting allows you to obviously minimize your impression waste, be so much more focused, which obviously increases the relevancy of the ad, of the message, of the offer that you're trying to get across. And in turn, it gives you better performance and better conversion rate. So that was example number one, super simple, really pointing about how you can do geofencing on steroid and not rely on the basic use cases. Second example, do you know how to leverage location data to find new customers? There was a lot of conversation earlier on the panel about new customers, and we all love new customers. So how do we get more of them? Where do we find them? And how do we look at location data to find more of them? Meet Jackie. She loves burgers, and she lives a mile away or a block away from your awesome local burger joint. She comes in, grabs a burger, and all of a sudden, you and the rest of the digital marketing world thinks Jackie is this. She lives and eats burger 5 times a day, and is probably never going to eat anything else but burgers. So when in reality, Jackie is a person. She's this multi-dimensional customer that has certain demographics and psychographics and visitation data associated with her behavior. But at the same time, she has interests, she has passion, she's motivated by certain things, she leads a certain lifestyle and has certain values that define who she is and why she makes the decisions that she makes. From fundamental life decisions all the way to why she might want to go grab a burger. So that gives us a more completed picture of who Jackie is and how we can find more Jackies. But guess what? Location data alone is not enough. I think we can all agree that QSR is changing so rapidly, and I think the kind of like motivations driving customer decisions are so critical, and that cannot be uncovered by location alone. Just the fact that she likes burgers and lives close to your shop is not enough for her to be a repeat customer or for her to evangelize to bring you new customers. We need something beyond that. For us, that means being able to define Jackie's type. What is she driven by? What are her motivations and values? And how do we kind of apply what we call geotype, or essentially motivation-based targeting? That's how we find more Jackies, not because she eats a burger and where she lives, but rather what drives her decisions. We start by affinity and motivations. What are the types of QSR places that she might stop at? What are the types of retail stores that she's interested at, that she shops at? What does her social online search tell us? Is she interested in owning a home, a car? Is she not? What kind of a lifestyle she leads? All of that allows us to define what her type is, and how do we essentially leverage that as a baseline and as a common thread to find more Jackies. Through the sort of suite of capabilities that we have at ThinkNear with regards to location-based intelligence, audience data, data sciences and analytics to really help you uncover audience insights, we really want to get at two main points. One, getting more competitive intel for the brands, and two, finding more Jackies. So the geotype kind of examples that you see on the side are essentially that motivation-based targeting that I spoke about. Everything else around that circle is getting more competitive intel. We can get to things like frequency analysis. I know somebody spoke earlier about how frequent their customers visit and what that means. Like this particular example on top shows you that 6% of your guests drive nearly 30% of your local store visits. That's a pretty significant number and pretty important to kind of figure out how do you gain more of that 6%? How do you make them come back more, or even how do you convert more of that 26 and 67% into the yellow category? So making the occasional visitors a frequent visitor, and how we apply that to how, where, and what you target them with so that it's more relevant and more actionable. We can tell you things like how long people or how much are they willing to drive to your local QSR locations next to your two top competitors. We can tell you hours of the day, specific days of the week where you might have an opportunity over your competitors or vice versa, so that you can be smarter in how you go about your conquesting strategies. All of that culminates into the 4 core products that we look at. Where you are, who you are, where you've been, and what motivates you. This is important because you can't apply every single one of this in the same way to every campaign. Just as we look at your audience holistically, we look at the media that you design for them holistically too. So it really requires a bespoke strategy to kind of employ and activate 1, 2, maybe all 4 of these things as it applies to your brand, so that you can get to what we spoke about earlier, which is gaining more competitive intel so you know who you're up against and what you're dealing with, and 2, defining and leveraging that type so that you can find more of it and drive them to your stores. We've been pioneering location-based mobile ads. We work with a number of QSR brands locally, nationally, across the US, and 10 minutes is not a lot of time. So if you have questions, if you want to get in touch with us and learn more, Yummy at ThinkNear. And thank you, guys.
All right. Well, actually, Mandana, that was great. And any questions for Mandana? If you have a team here, and we're going to do a coffee break.
Yeah.
And so they can grab you for
Come
questions.
say hi and
raise your hand if you're with Mandana's team from ThinkNear. Are you here? All right.
Back there.
Fantastic. Great. So thank you for kicking us off into a networking break.